2024 has no doubt been a rough year for Chicago Bears fans and the Chicago Bears organization. On today's episode, we're going to talk about why 2024 is a year that Ryan Poles is going to want to quickly put behind him and start making some corrections for this offseason. We're also going to talk about where the Bears sit in the NFC North in the long run and how we are far off from the goal of leading the NFC North. And what's the future of Tevin Jenkins? One NFL insider believes he knows. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content. But before the content, happy holidays to everybody. I hope everybody's having a great day with their family, that they're kicking it, enjoying the time off, whatever it is. Whatever you guys do to enjoy this time of year, I hope you guys are really enjoying it and doing it at the utmost. But one person who I'm sure is enjoying their time away from the dysfunction that is the Chicago Bears is Ryan Poles. And I want to start this episode off talking about what are some of the biggest mistakes that Ryan Poles made this year and why he's hoping he's going to leave all those mistakes behind in 2024 as we head into 2025. Of course, you got to start off with, some of the decisions that Ryan Poles made that ended up, hurting this team in the long run. And that first one is Matt Eberflus. Ryan Poles was one of the loudest voices reportedly in this offseason as far as in the Bears front office that wanted to keep Matt Eberflus around. And when you look at the way that this season went, even though Ryan Poles reportedly was one of the first ones to come to the realization and to the desire of moving off from Matt Eberflus after the Patriots game, but ownership did not allow them initially to fire the head coach. It's still we could have avoided all of that, right? Had Ryan Poles not gone to bat with Matt Eberflus, a guy that has the same agent as him, a guy that he is friends with. If those things would not have happened, I'm not saying that it would have completely turned this Bears team around because the offensive line probably would have still been in shambles. Caleb Williams would have still had to go through what he went through, but you just never know. Yeah, the Bears eventually pivoted and they hired new defensive and offensive coordinators, but who's to say that it couldn't have been a jump start? Maybe you do get Ben Johnson a year. Now, reportedly, I think it's all rumors, but, maybe you could have got Ben Johnson even before the $15 million claim rumors and things like that. There's a lot that goes across it, but when you look at how the season went for Matt Eberflus and how the late game collapses, the lack of situational awareness, the lack of rallying the team, the lack of accountability, he's not self-aware at all. These are all things that we saw over the first few years of Matt Eberflus, and they should have been not a surprise at all to the people who's in that building with him every single day, but for some reason it was. Right now, maybe the Bears needed to remove the fact that they could no longer blame Justin Fields, right, or fans or whatever it is, and put the focus on Matt Eberflus. But when it comes down to it, listen, Matt Eberflus was at fault. Now, he's not the only reason, right? And as we've seen, this Bears team has still had struggles, the big struggles over this losing streak. But I do think that deciding to bring back Matt Eberflus is one of those decisions in the offseason that was made surely by Ryan Poles, and he went to bat for this guy. And we now saw how that went. Now, again, like I said, this is not to blame everything on Matt Eberflus, but the shortcomings that Matt Eberflus did have as a head coach, the ones that we've saw, right? And you can forgive certain shortcomings when you're still at the beginning of your rebuild, right? And this is a Bears team that made the shift from, being at the beginning of a rebuild to they made moves to try to, put the right players out there, right players around Caleb Williams. They talked about the right things of wanting to come in and compete, and it was about wins this season. And Matt Eberflus held a lot of that back. So, that to start off, that decision to bring Matt Eberflus back, it was a big deal. And you see now that we still haven't rebounded from that really well. Hopefully we can in the future. The next mistake made by Ryan Poles, of course, is the Velis Jones evaluation. You can't go through an offseason without really talking about that. The fact that you even brought back Velis when a lot of us saw that Velus Jones was not going to be it. It was Ryan Poles really committed to a guy that he drafted in his first draft. And then you get, even deciding to bring him back for training camp. you get a call and you get offered a draft pick to trade for Velis Jones, and you decide to keep him. That's crazy, man. Like it's like you double down on the stupidity in that case, and it's really unfortunate when that comes down to it. But that's where this Bears team found themselves. That was a decision that Ryan Poles made, and it's one that again that continually bit the Bears in the ass. And yeah, you could have gotten some type of asset back for it. And when you look at now where this team has shifted to a fifth round pick, I believe. Like you can get a running back in the fifth round and get an additional fifth round pick in this upcoming draft could help the Bears drastically. And instead, you end up waiving him for nothing. He goes, he hasn't really done much, in the team that he signed with, but still, like, you had an opportunity to get something back for somebody that, despite trying to move him to running back, whatever it was, we saw that there was no future for Velus Jones on this team. He just wasn't going to make an impact. The speed that he had there was great, and I get it. There's always going to be the theoretical weapon of what somebody with that type of speed can do for you. But the fact is that it didn't get the Bears anywhere. It didn't get anything for us. All the speed in the world don't matter if you don't have the skill to be able to use it, and you don't have the intelligence to be able to hold on to the goddamn football. And that's what we saw from this team. And, honestly, it sucks. It really does suck when it comes down to it. And the Bears, hopefully Ryan Poles learns from this mistake, because this is another mistake that Ryan Poles made that just, it's unfortunate, to say the least. It continues to be unfortunate. The decision that Ryan Poles makes. And, eventually, hopefully we get in a place where we're just making better decisions at some point. Like, we can't keep making the same damn mistakes, can we? Let's hope not, right? So, that's something to look out. And then we got to get into the draft by Ryan Poles. Now, getting Caleb Williams, getting Rome Odunze, you did really good with your first two draft picks. But then let's look at the other draft picks in this. In a draft where you did not have already the bevy of picks that you've had in prior drafts, you draft Kieran Amagaje, who was taken in the third round. And I think when you look at some of the other players around there, is that you could have maybe gone a different route that could have helped this team more. I get it. You drafted Kieran Amagaje because of what the potential is there for him, right? And you thought that you got a guy from Yale that was in an undiscovered, a little covered school that maybe could turn out to be a steal for you. But sometimes in going for the steal, you end up missing something that may not have as much top-end potential, but maybe has a way higher floor. And that's what ended up hurting the Chicago Bears with the Kieran Amagaje pick. Now, Kieran's shapes, it looks like he's still going to be, a starter now, especially with what's going on with Braxton Jones. We'll see what happens there. But just overall, man, what the Bears did there with drafting Kieran Amagaje is, and maybe this still works out, right? Like, I'm talking about right now. And you guys know with drafts, you always have to evaluate it now, and then you have to turn around and evaluate it a couple years down the road, because maybe it does go a different way for you eventually. But when you just look at the decision that was made there, Kieran Amagaje just has not worked out. You look at Jonah Ellis, who could have been an edge that we could have drafted there. You look at J.D. Glaze, a tackle there who could have been drafted. Michael Calves, who got drafted by the Colts. Like, Christian Haynes, a guard that you could have drafted. There were still some really good offensive linemen in that draft that you could have drafted. And, Ryan Poles went with the risk, and it didn't pay off. Now, while I do think as well that Tory Taylor is going to be somebody that we end up looking at, you look at the way he flips the field, the number of yardage that he has, how he has, when the Bears have not been able to stay on the field on third down situations, how he's been able to help put the Bears defense in a better situation. Tory Taylor is a good pick. But you still have to ask yourself, where the Bears roster was at that time, with the pick of Tory Taylor would have gone better at a different position, because it's not like we didn't have at least a solid punter, right? And that's the question that you have to ask there. And as well as Austin Booker. Austin Booker is a big upside pick in that fifth round, and he still could very well turn into a positive plus player for the Chicago Bears. But overall, the draft class decisions here, they weren't necessarily the best either. And then free agent class, the DeAndre Swift signing. And this is not an indictment on DeAndre Swift, but this is a lack of kind of vision for the Chicago Bears. Imagine had they kept David Montgomery, right? And then also in signing DeAndre Swift, you made Khalil Herbert expendable, but then you decided to not trade him while his value was higher. He sits there and spends most of the season getting DNPs and is a healthy scratch. And then you end up moving him for next to nothing, right? And it's not just the signing of DeAndre Swift, it's how that signing went down. If you were going to sign Swift and you knew that him and Khalil Herbert had such kind of similar skill sets, you should have traded Khalil Herbert before he had a chance to knock down his value. Now, there's a chance you may have not gotten much better of a pick out of it, but still, you get something back in that case, right? You take advantage of why a player's value is higher. And of course, had the Bears not been willing to, trying to be a little bit cheaper, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, these would have been guys that for what the Bears are trying to do with their run game would have been much better for the Chicago Bears in the long run if you would have given them some money. And so overall, again, the direction, I know this is a lot of hindsight, right? And I admit this is a lot of hindsight, but hindsight is where you learn from. I'm not saying let's judge Ryan Poles strictly off hindsight, but I want to see what he does as far as improving and what he learns from this ability to have hindsight going into 2025, because clearly we need a better evaluation. And while I mentioned Matt Eberflus, I could have thrown in Shane Waldron there as well, right? Nate Davis, that mistake. Now, Nate Davis signing happened in 2023, so I can't put that in a 2024 thing, but you just look at how much came crashing down from the Bears' prior decisions. Drafting Velis Jones came crashing down, and then not deciding to trade him when you got a trade offer. The Shane Waldron hiring, keeping Matt Eberflus. The Nate Davis signing ended up crashing and burning this season as well, right? Some of your draft picks ended up being that. It is just a bevy of decisions that end up coming back to bite the Bears in the ass. And you got to look at that, and hopefully this Bears team could really learn from that and develop from that. And then even this, right? And this is an interesting article that was written here. I think this is fair as well. This one's from Lee Olizak, I believe is how you pronounce it, that wrote this article. And he proposed the question here. Can we even say that Ryan Poles even won the Panthers trade yet? Right? And in that, they more so are pointing at the record, right? Because the Panthers are 4-11 and the Chicago Bears are 4-11 on this season. Now, I will say this, though. When you look at Caleb, Williams and what he's going to eventually turn into, and the fact that we're still getting picks from that trade, how we flipped it and got Darnell Wright and Javon Dexter, out of trading the number one overall pick. All these things point towards the Bears still sitting in a position where they are way more likely to win this trade in the long term than the Panthers, who even had to bench Bryce Young at one point, right? But when it comes down to it, the Bears took advantage of something. Yes, we got DJ Moore out of that as well. DJ Moore is kind of fallen out of graces by a lot of Bears fans. I'm not somebody who, is calling DJ Moore cancer or anything like that. I will say this season, it's clearly been rough on him. It's clearly been rough on him mentally. He's not, I don't like the comments of him talking about vacation and things like that. But I think it's fair when people are like, hey, maybe the Bears didn't fleece the Panthers as much as we thought that they did, right? Now, we'll see what happens with there, right? How Caleb Williams develops, DJ Moore, what we get out of this pick, Tyreek Stevenson, Darnell Wright, Torrey Taylor. These are all players that we got from picks from the Carolina Panthers. But the fact is, if you're judging off wins and how successful your franchise is, Chicago Bears are sitting in the same spot right now as the Carolina Panthers. And that's the part of this where, people are going to say their thing right now. So, we'll see what happens. And I still think that the Bears are still in a safe place where at the end of all of this, we're going to be able to say that the Bears won this trade adamantly, right? I think that's going to come out. But it's funny how all these pieces now that we've gotten from this trade all have questions around them. Caleb Williams is going to have questions as a rookie quarterback regardless. We know the overthrows, things like that. You look at DJ Moore and now kind of, his recent vibe and how some Bears fans feel about him. Tyreek Stevenson lost his mojo and it, has not come back yet since that Hail Mary play. Darnell Wright is, kind of taking a step back a little bit this season, I think it's fair to say, but the offensive line as a whole has been terrible, so we'll see how he bounced back in year 3. And Torrey Taylor, overall, is a really good pick by the Bears. And like I said, I think it's safer to say than not that the Torrey Taylor pick is going to be good for the Bears. But I think overall, there's still some doubt around should they have drafted him there. So we'll see how it's all going to come along. But, this is what happens when your franchise loses. Everybody's going to reframe everything that you've done, either good or bad, and it's going to be looked at in the negative light. And it's up to the Bears to start course correcting that so we can get back to talking about this team as a team on the rise rather than a team that took so far down a tick from where it was, right? And it also came out as well yesterday that Ryan Poles may be having his favorite coach in this. And this one comes from Eric Lambert, who says that Ryan Poles is now pushing for Ben Johnson to get this job. Now, this is a little weird for me, especially because you haven't been able to interview him yet. And while I get it that he is in the division, we get to see him 2 times a year, and we've gotten to see how he coaches that Detroit Lions. Don't you want to go through the process in full before you necessarily push one name as a favorite for the head coach? I would think that you want to, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of really good things and aspects about Ben Johnson and why he could make some sense for the Chicago Bears, right? And why he could be the guy that could help not only bring this offense, but kind of lead the Bears team to a new direction. There's a lot of that, right? His track record's there. The coaches that vouch for him are there. His intelligence, the way that he has a focus on exactly what he needs and wants out of his first head coaching job. These are all things that I adamantly respect about Ben Johnson, right? But I do think that if you're going into this process before you even get a chance to truly start it, and I mean with sit down one-on-one interviews, and you already have your guy that's the clear-cut favorite, I worry about how objective does that leave you throughout the interview process? That's just my personal question. Now, it could very well go that the Bears go through, they interview everybody, and they don't just settle on Ben Johnson, and maybe somebody surprises them. But I won't lie to you. A little bit of this does seem in desperation, and I do think that Ryan Poles understands that getting this head coaching job right or hire right, that's what's going to save his job if things save his job. Because if this season goes left again, it's going to go left for Ryan Poles, and Ryan Poles may not be back after the 2025 season if he doesn't get this head coaching search right. But, hearing that, that it comes down to that, it is what, and like I've said before, it comes down to also how you support him if you're going to hire another first-time head coach. I have my dream defensive coordinator. If you hire Ben Johnson as the head coach, I want Lovie Smith as the defensive coordinator. I would love for Lovie Smith to come and be the defensive coordinator. I have no idea if Lovie Smith even wants to be a defensive coordinator or deal with the NFL nonsense yet again, or even in the Bears organization. But I'll tell you what, it would be so much as far as bridging the gap of former Bears fans as well as with the new era if Lovie Smith ends up, and again, I'm fantasy booking here, y'all. I am still a fan, even though I have this show, so I got to be a fan first, but that would just be such a dream 1-2 punch. Not that I don't even know if Ben Johnson's my personal favorite to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. I do like Brian Flores a lot, and I get it that he has a lot of kind of other things outside of football around him that could, dissuade the Bears from hiring him as their next head coach, but I like him. I'm not saying necessarily that he should be the guy. I'm just saying that I do like Brian Flores as a guy that could make some sense for the Bears as far as bringing in that no-nonsense smash mouth style here. But overall, if you can get Ben Johnson, and regardless if it's Lovie or not, I think you got to try to find a veteran defensive coordinator that will be able to come in and pair with Ben Johnson. I think that if you can surround him with veterans, right? And not to say that he's necessarily going to fail if not, but if you can surround him with some veterans, set a base there to help with some things that we did not do for Matt Eberflus, I think that could go a long way in solidifying Ben Johnson being that guy and kind of learning that job on the fly, at least in my opinion. Now, we'll see what happens there. It could be that nothing happens. It could be, that it ends up still being that maybe they do go a different route. Maybe it is Mike Vrabel. Maybe it is somebody. Maybe it's somebody that we haven't talked about yet. But to hear that Ryan Poles kind of has his favorite already, I can understand it, right? Because you still want to have your idea. But overall, and this just brings us to the last thing, the Bears in the NFC North, we are still the joke of the NFC North. The NFC North is a great division, and it's always going to be a tough division, right? And I think that's been made evident, but it's clear now that the Bears every team in the division has a double-digit win record right now except for the Bears. The Bears have the reverse of that, right? We have an 11-loss record. And so the Bears have a long way to go to really be able to stand, and I think the measuring yourself against the NFC North actually isn't bad in this case because of how good and deep the NFC North is. For example, the Minnesota Vikings, who are second in the NFC North, would lead three other divisions in football right now. And the Green Bay Packers, who right now they're 11th. They still, they've clinched a playoff berth now. They would lead other divisions in the game of football. This is a deep division. And so for the Bears to really want to stand up, to measure yourself against these other teams in the NFC North, I do think that is a pathway to having overall success. And this isn't just about beating the Packers, so to say. It's more so about getting, who do you measure yourself against? And if you want to be great, you have to measure yourself against the other great teams. And the NFC North is a great division in football. You look at the AFC South, for example, 9 wins leads that division. The Green Bay Packers, who are third in the North, would lead that division. That's how this season is gone. And that's how deep this NFC North is. And while coming into the season, of course, I had hoped that we were going to be able to compete in the North. Didn't think we were going to be able to win the North, but compete in the North. The Bears got a long way to go. And I do think it does start. I used to fight against people who say, well, it starts in your division, because technically you can still make the playoffs, with not having the best record in your division. But I do think that my mindset, seeing how the NFC North has performed this year, and the Bears are the outlier of that, no, you want to measure yourself against the NFC North. So let's see if the Bears can do that. But that's my time for today, guys. Merry Christmas to all. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. That's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.